is only 4 words. This one's for John.
This one's for Pat.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Interviewing Broncos Country. This is our 5th guest. I'm really excited about this. I was born August 5th. Reggie Bush wore 5. 5's just a great number all around. And this is our 5th guest. So coming in, we have Travis. What's up, Travis?
Hey, what's going on? August 5th, huh?
August 5th, yeah.
I'm August 3rd.
Oh man, I knew I liked you. We were just talking backstage before we hit it, and I was like, you know what? Let's just hit play because I could tell that we were going to have a great chemistry and a great episode. So, how long have you been a Broncos fan, and are you currently in state of Colorado or are you out of state?
Yeah, so I am in state. I was in the Army. Did just under 14 years. I was lucky enough to pull the strings I needed so I could get stationed here at Fort Carson in Colorado Springs.
Nice.
And then the time came for me to get out, and I'm from Colorado. This is my home. I've never been to the Springs before. I was up in Fort Collins, but my wife loved it. I love everything Colorado, so we just stayed.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I've been a fan since I want to say 95 or 96. I was born in 90, so it's like the earliest I can remember of watching anything football related. And growing up, we lived in Utah. There's no Utah team, but the Denver games were constantly getting broadcast. So I grew up with Terrell Davis, John Elway, Mike Shanahan. Like when I think of the Broncos, that's really where it kind of stems from. And so that's where my roots go to. So as a Broncos fan, I'm a little lucky. I'm a little spoiled because we've had some really, really good years, but we've fallen on some hard times recently. And I'm hoping we can get past that and trend it the other way because it's time.
Yeah, no, it is. And man, I was thinking when you were talking about that, I was thinking about my earliest memories because I was born in 94. So I don't really remember Terrell Davis and John Elway, but I remember Brian Greasy. I remember Jake Plummer, John Lynch, Champ Bailey, Al Wilson, some of those guys, even Ashley Lilly, those type of people. It was really the Manning years where I got to get a little taste of what it's like to, go to 2 Super Bowls in 4 years and get into those winning ways. But I felt like my whole life, even when the Broncos weren't necessarily like the greatest team, they weren't the dynasty. They haven't been, I mean, you could make an argument that they were almost a dynasty, with John Elway. They went to like 5 or 6 Super Bowls with him, I think. So I don't remember because I wasn't alive, but if it, imagine if they would have, not waited till 97 to win, they could have been a dynasty. So, but I always knew that there was a chance the Broncos could, get hot at the right time and go. Like, I never felt like I was a fan of this, like growing up, the Browns, the Texans, the Miami Dolphins, even the Lions. These were the teams that were kind of like the bottom of the NFL. Mm-hmm. And now those teams are all rising teams, and it's teams like the Broncos and the Patriots that are, falling into what those teams used to be. Do you think that the buck kind of stops here with Sean Payton going into his second year? Bo Nix is going to be, the kind of the savior to get us out of it, because it's been, almost 10 years since Super Bowl 50. And it blows my mind to think about if there was a kid out there that was 8 years old. You said your first memory was around 8 of football. So imagine an 8-year-old out there. He barely remembers Super Bowl 50. And now he is 18 years old, a legal adult. So his whole entire life has been, which doesn't seem like a long time to us, but when you're 18, it's your whole life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's over half your life at that point.
Right. And it's crazy to think about, to not us, but to some kids out there. The Broncos have been like the Browns, the Texans, the Dolphins, like those type of teams. Do you ever think about that when, the years start adding up that we haven't been to the playoffs, and do you think that we're going to get out of it this year?
So I think it's probably 1 or 2 years too early to really put an emphasis or a lot of, not just hopium, if you will, that the Broncos are going to make a postseason appearance. I think one of the things that, unfortunately, and it sucks for Broncos fans everywhere, but unfortunately, we are in a division with the Chiefs right now. With that team constantly evolving and changing under the leadership, the mentorship of Andy Reid and a Patrick Mahomes. Whether or not this is Travis Kelce's last year, whether or not their receivers can catch a football, they are going to be a threat, and they are basically a lock for the postseason. We also have now entering the conversation Harbaugh. Like, look at his track record and what he's been able to do, not just with the NFL, but also at the collegiate level. So even if we take into consideration that the Chargers, for all their faults, for all their good players, I've never personally felt like they were a threat to the Broncos specifically. For whatever reason, whether it was Justin Herbert, whether it was Phillip Rivers, they always found a way to lose the game. They'd always find a way to charger it up, right?
Yeah.
They were never really a threat, but we would constantly split games with them season after season. And for no reason, we'd win in their home, they'd win in ours. And then the next season, it's reversed. Like, I can't, I'd have to do some research and digging, but I can't remember a time where either team has swept the other team for consecutive years. And then for whatever reason, what it makes it even worse is that the Raiders have had our number for the last 3-4 seasons.
Yeah,
Like,
that one makes sense.
It's baffling to me because they're not a good team, but we just can't seem to beat them. And I think part of that has been the inconsistency at the very tippy top with the ownership situation coming out of the Pat Bowlen trust, not having a clear direction for the team, which Bowlen child gets the majority of the ownership, who's going to be the figurehead. Oh, they're going to sell the team. Okay, well, who's going to buy it? And now it's this group, right? So we have the Walmart money, but we have Condoleezza Rice. We have other individuals in the ownership group who are there to help make decisions. But the main thing is that, and I'm a terrible Bronco fan because I don't know all their names, but I forget the one guy. He's an F1 race car driver. He was like very competitive and he was very good at what he did in F1. We had other business moguls who've just been very successful at business. So I was hopeful when they took over that they would kind of shepherd and kind of lead the organization in the right direction. I think at this day and age, if you're going to buy a football team, whether or not you have the money as a single entity or if you're going to be an ownership group, which I think is probably going to be the new norm, you have to be willing to spend money, but you're not going to do this and lose money. If you own an NFL team, it's pretty safe to say that you're going to print money. And it's also pretty safe to say that the more you win, the more money you can earn. No one's going to want to buy your guys' jerseys if you're constantly losing.
Right.
It all stems, it goes back to Pat Bowlen. Like, it's all about winning. It's all about trying to do whatever is possible to make sure that you are in the best possible situation to walk away with that W week in, week out to get to the postseason. And I think that they made the right decision in bringing on Sean Payton. I was very excited for him. I know there was a bit of a divide in Broncos country from what I saw between Sean Payton and Coach Harbaugh coming out of Michigan. I could see it going either way. They're both very successful. They are both well-known entities. They're not first-time head coaches. We don't have to, relive the Hackett days, with either option. We're able to move forward with somebody who knows what it takes to run the team and how to lead the team. But was it the right call? Again, I think it's too soon to tell, but I do think that we're in a similar situation with like Chicago had a few years ago. I forget his name, but their head coach and Mitch Trubisky. His future
Matt no, not
Eberflus.
Matt Eberflus.
No, it
Is
was the
it
guy before
Eberflus?
him. It was the guy
No,
before him,
yeah,
wasn't it?
he was the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Um,
I
I'll pull it up.
I can't remember his name, but it's a very similar situation where his
Matt
future,
Nagy. That's what
Nagy,
it was.
that's what it was.
I didn't
Matt,
even have to type anything.
yeah.
I always go, I don't know, and then as soon as I go to type, it comes up.
But like it's a very similar situation where his success as a coach is tied to Mitch's success on the field. I think that because Sean Payton has a better track record overall as a head coach, he's going to get a little bit longer leash. But I mean, we're 2 years into the Walton Penner ownership group. I don't think they're excited to lose anymore. I think they're well over it. I think they're at the point where they're like, you know what? We're going to give you a little bit of leash because of your name and your pedigree, but we are trying to win right now. And I think that put the emphasis on Sean Payton. That was a 5-game win stretch that we had this season. It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
It was great, but it also ruined our draft pick. So it was one of those, like, every time we were winning, I'm like, I like this, but at the same time, like, this team isn't going to stay intact. We are going to lose people. We can't afford to pay everybody. And at the time, dealing with the fallout of the Russell Wilson, I guess, lack of performance, you could say, that contract weighs heavily on the entire team. So now we're strapped for cash moving forward. We are getting out of it. So it does make sense to draft a rookie quarterback this year. Okay. But where we're sitting and we don't have draft capital because we traded away our picks for Sean Payton, for Russell Wilson, what do you do? And I think they did the right thing in standing pat. I was always a Bo Nix fan. I don't really watch college football, but one of my old coworkers, that's all he watches. That's like his main thing. And he was telling me, he's like, I'm a Michigan fan. I love everything Michigan. I don't understand the hype behind JJ McCarthy. He is a decent quarterback, but I don't think he's going to come into the NFL and make waves. He said, if I was going to pick anybody out of this year's draft, my number one pick would be Bo Nix. And so I looked into some of his film and everything, and I was like, you know what? What I'm seeing is mechanically a lot of good things, but also his ability to process, his football awareness, his IQ. I don't see the negatives against him in terms of age. I don't see why that's a big deal. If anything, to me, that's a plus because he's older. He's not as young and immature. He's a married guy. He knows that when you get into the NFL, like, it doesn't take a lot to get out. Look at Henry Ruggs. He almost could have been a Bronco, but had we drafted him, that could have been something that we dealt with. Instead, it was the Raiders. But it doesn't take a lot for your ability to stay in the league to be jeopardized. There's always something, always off-field issues. He doesn't have any. So you've already got a good head on your shoulders. Apparently, you're crazy accurate. That's what the stats are telling me. Yeah, we had the COVID year, so you have more starts, whatever. But more than all of that, it's just the complete and total package. What makes an NFL quarterback work? A starting franchise NFL quarterback? And to me, the number one thing is your mental acuity. How well you can process, how fast you can process, and can you make the right decision? One of the reasons why Patrick Mahomes is so dangerous is not because he does crazy things that nobody else does physically. It's not the sidearm throws. It's not the no-look pass. It's his ability to read the field. He's able to direct the defenses with his eyes so he can make that no-look pass. But he's able to do that because of his mind. Look at Peyton Manning in that awesome Super Bowl run that we had, and he was able to walk off into the sunset. He was benched that year because he physically couldn't get it done, but his mental ability, his awareness, the chance for him to be that field general, like, it's second to none. And so I think that what we're seeing from Bo Nix coming into the league, things look promising and I'm hopeful, but ultimately his success is going to be tied to Sean Payton's success. And I think if Sean Payton is getting the guy that he wants, that he can craft, that he can mold, we're going to get a at least, in my opinion, a decent product in the form of probably 8 to 10 plus wins a year, even with the division that we have.
Yeah. Wow. A lot to break down there. One thing I
Sorry.
do no, you're good. One thing I do like is that you brought up the Chargers and the Raiders. So I want to get back to talking about them in a second. The other thing that you said, you're talking about processing speed, and that's kind of what separates the quarterbacks at least at this level. And I think I just heard, I can't remember who it was, but yesterday I heard somebody saying, I think it might have been Chris Sims. He was saying all quarterbacks at the NFL level all are just very, very good quarterbacks. They can go to the rooms, they can recite plays, they have, a good arm, they're accurate. You don't get to the NFL without being all of those things. But it is the mental sharpness that really separates. And I think about Jordan Love last year.
Mm-hmm.
We actually beat the Packers, whatever that was, week 7 or something like that. And then all of a sudden Love turned it on. And what did he ended up throwing like 23 touchdowns to, I think, 3 interceptions his final 10 weeks. Something crazy. I did the numbers. He was on pace for 40 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, which would have led the NFL. So he could potentially be an MVP candidate next year if he can continue that type of play. But when I was watching Jordan Love play, especially the Dallas game in the playoffs, I also love the Packers, not nearly even ballpark of where I love the Broncos. But I was born in Wisconsin. My family's all Packers. I'm the oddball that chose the Broncos as a kid. But when I was watching that game, you're right. It was the fact that I think there was a play where there was like a free blitzer, a free rusher coming in, and Love just threw a touchdown pass. And it was like you knew that as soon as he saw that, he knew exactly where to go with the ball, and he trusted the play. Like he just that's when they say the game slows down for these guys. That's what it looked like. It looked like he was like Adam Sandler in the movie Click, and he like paused the
Right.
game and said, "Oh, there he is." And then I was like, "Wow." So I agree with you. Like when some people that aren't that great at like the analytics of football or understanding like the mind of a quarterback, I'm not, a guru of that by any means, but they'll call it the eyeball test. The key passes the eyeball test. But what is the eyeball test? It's that. It's mental sharpness, it's quick decisions, quick diagnosis, understanding and trusting the play caller and the play itself and your players that are, making the play happen. That's why Brock Purdy was such a good fit for Kyle Shanahan. And you remember when Trey Lance was drafted, I think it was a preseason game. He ran for like a touchdown and 60 yards. And they asked Kyle Shanahan, how do you think Trey Lance did? And he was like, I don't know. He didn't do anything I asked him to. Like he ran the football,
Yeah.
So, when you get these like top-notch play callers, they're like, look, I've designed the play will work, but you have to trust the play and you have to make these quick decisions. Like when you see Sean Payton screaming at Russell Wilson on the sideline after, the red zone F up that happened, whatever that was, like that just tells me that there was a play and Russ, we saw it all the time. Russ, an open receiver in the middle of the field. Why isn't he throwing the ball? Why isn't he why is he holding the ball? He doesn't have to do that big rollout, and then when Bo Nix was drafted, he said, I like that he does that kind of that sidestep and throw. Like he doesn't have to like run away to, okay, now I can breathe and throw. He feels comfortable with a pretty he's not a claustrophobic quarterback, if that makes sense. Like he can have that pressure around him without folding to it. So I think I was the same way as you. I'm not a big college football fan, but I have a buddy who's like lives and dies college. He watches the high school players. He knows like what stars they were coming out. He follows them in the transfer portal. He's just way into it. And NFL has always been my thing. But he said the same things about Bo Nix. So I went and looked at the tape because I thought, I mean, honestly, I'm being told by the media that Bo Nix was drafted high, right?
Mhm.
And it's funny because during the draft process, you hear Sean Payton saying things like the NFL media is kind of a train, and if you're not careful, you'll jump on that train and not really, I guess, give the right attention to your internal draft process that's happening in the building. And then when he went on about, giving Bo Nix the playbook and looking at his film, he said, we can't be the only ones that are seeing this. That's how he felt about Bo Nix. So even if we didn't go on that 5-game winning streak, do you think they still would have drafted Bo Nix?
I am very hopeful that would have been their guy from the beginning. I when my buddy was telling me about like all the other quarterback prospects, I understood that Caleb Williams was the number one prospect. I get that he is at a big school, so there's always a lot of media attention, and the fact that he had the year that he did last year, coming into his senior year, there was a lot of hype, and so his name was out there. He's got all the NIL deals, he's on all the commercials, but I'm looking at the highlights, I'm looking at the footage, I'm looking at the reels, and what I see is a guy who thrives in chaos, who thrives outside of the pocket. And if that's the kind of system that you want to run, then that should be your guy. However, I wouldn't have deemed him the number one pick for sure. I wouldn't have said, yes, this is the best quarterback out of this draft. I never understood that take. I looked at the Drake May footage. I didn't get it. It didn't make sense to me. He just seemed like an average prospect. Like, I'm not seeing anything that's really jumping out or standing out here. The guy that's
size too. Sometimes size will elevate.
Yeah, I mean, he's got that prototypical, what Elway was always looking for when he was drafting quarterbacks. Like, you've got the stature, you've got the cannon. Like, yeah, this is what we want. Sure, that can work for you. But what system are you running? One of the things that's infuriated me the most, literally ever since Manning retired, was that our succession plan was blown to pieces when Brock Osweiler left for Houston. I liked what I saw from him, and I liked that we had Kubiak. He had to step down for health reasons. We lose Osweiler because he's going to get paid, and now we're scrambling. What do we do? Who's the guy? And we wind up with Trevor Siemian, who, by all accounts, was a very serviceable, very good guy. He seemed very poised. He did not get rattled. That was true. But he wasn't going to win you a game. He wasn't going to rally the troops and march down the field and take the game back from the jaws of defeat. He was not that kind of player, and that's okay. He was a phenomenal, I would say, backup, almost like bridge quarterback, But ever since then, we've been scrambling on the quarterback carousel. We've been scrambling on the head coach carousel, and there hasn't been any consistency, which, again, I attribute to us not having direct ownership. We had that trust. They weren't going in the same direction. Now that we finally have an ownership group, they have a clear path of where they want to go. Okay, who's going to take us there? Clearly, Hackett wasn't the answer. We thought that Russell Wilson could overcome that. Well, he doesn't gel. He doesn't vibe with Sean Payton. That marriage is over. So we're moving forward for like what seems like the first time since that awesome Super Bowl run. We finally have a clear direction, just a direction. Whether or not it's the right one remains to be seen. But I'm hopeful. Because again, like looking at everybody's tape, like one of the things that I would want, I am by no means, the individual you should go to. I'm not the armchair couch, coach guy. Like that's not me. But when I look at players, I'm evaluating just wave top, tip of the iceberg type deal, because I don't get that deep into it. But one of the things that I look for the most, other than character, is, what is your forte? What do you bring to the table in your specific position that I can't find anywhere else? And one of the things that really stood out to me about Bo Nix was that on top of his accuracy, he's got that pocket presence. And he can extend the play if he had to. He's not Caleb Williams by any stretch of the imagination, but he could He could keep the play going for another second or two if need be. He's not crazy slow. One of the reasons why Tom Brady, who I have the same opinion of him as our friend Brandon Perna, not a fan. But if I could critique him at all, it was, he's not very fast. And look at how many games he won, how many Super Bowls he got. And it was all because of his ability to process quickly, his ability to stay in the pocket, to scramble when he had to, not because it was the easy answer.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that rings true for Bo Nix. He's got a lot of the tools and the traits. And I think that if you're Sean Payton, you're sitting there with that mid first round draft pick. Do we mortgage the future and move up? Well, how's the draft going? Like, we probably shouldn't move up. That's asking a little bit too much, but we're going to tempt fate if we move down. So why don't we just stand pat? And if he gets there, that's our guy. And I think that if we'd gone into this draft with those same kind of, expectations from the Walton Penner ownership group, with having that clear direction of where we want to take the franchise, I still think we draft Bo Nix. But I think that if we'd had a better pick, we probably would have traded down, gained some more draft capital for this year and next year to really help solidify and build the team around him, because this guy does have all the things you're looking for. He's got the mind. He's got the maturity. He's able to process on the field. Does he have the biggest arm in the draft? Maybe, maybe not. But he can play the game, and he can play it well enough that I think if you had a solid, decent line, maybe top 15, top half, he'll win you plenty of games.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how, and talking about the media and that train, the media train, I don't know how the narrative really began about the arm strength, because when you watch his highlights, I mean, you only need to see arm strength is not something that you have one day and then you lose it the next day. I mean, if you see 160-yard touchdown pass from Bo Nix, then that's his arm strength. It's not like that's gonna, regress. And I'm with you on the age thing. I'm not sure how that narrative, kicked off too. Like, oh, he's going to be 30 before he gets to his second contract. It's like, look, in a perfect world, sure, he would come in at 20, 21 years old and be 25 when he gets his first contract, or 24. But where we're at right now, like, these are just futuristic problems. If you're saying that Bo Nix is a little bit old as if it's a bad thing, I guess you're guaranteeing that he's going to be good enough to, earn a second contract. And I don't think we should assume anything at this point. I think we just need to take it, one game at a time and see how he does. And for a franchise that hasn't had a good quarterback in a decade, like, these are not problems. These are not real problems to Bronco fans. Like, we just want a good quarterback. All the quarterbacks that we brought in hopes that they would take over, were all in their 30s, like Case Keenum, Joe Flacco, Teddy Bridgewater. You got some young guys mixed in there, but look, at the end of the day, we're just looking for a quarterback. It's hard to find one in this league. So when you don't have one, you short of bringing in somebody that's, I mean, even Kirk Cousins, like, I wouldn't have been a fan of that, but he would have been the best quarterback we've had in a long time if they would have, made a move like that. But it would have kind of been like restarting the Manning thing, where you got 4 years, and, it would be nice for us to, because it's really been since Elway, that Denver's had a quarterback. And imagine if Elway never happened. We're talking about a franchise that, that changes dramatically how, the quarterback position in Denver is viewed. It's almost like the Bears, and, for whatever reason, they can't get a 4,000-yard passer. Like, obviously we had Elway and we had Manning, but if you're just looking at guys that we drafted, because we didn't even draft Elway, the Giants did, right? So if you just look at the guys we drafted, like, we've never gotten this right. But I think there's a reason to, have that optimism, is because Sean Payton's never drafted the quarterbacks. It's always been John Elway or, George Payton, Gary Kubiak. Even though he, medical reasons, he left the team. I think he might have saw the writing on the wall, because I think he was with the Vikings the very next year.
He was.
So, yeah, I agree with all that. And talking about the ownership group, because you mentioned, this is a good group, a lot of money. And the one thing that I I really do believe, and this might be, something that, billionaires and millionaires don't really care about, but I think it's a little underrated, is like, how important is it to you? Like, let's say you got four different, they got all these different investments. Millionaires have a ton. And it's like, over here, you got, the Broncos, and over here we got, Walmart and all these other things. But to Pat Bowlen, like, he spent all of his money on the Broncos, and then, was very open about, like, if I could be an owner of any NFL franchise, it would be the Denver Broncos. He was up at 5 a.m. rehabbing with the players, in the rooms. He was on the field in a mink coat. Like, he was very, very active. And it's one thing to have, money, and I think it's going to work out. But you can't replace that, like, true desire to want to win, and sometimes it can actually hurt you. Like, look at Jerry Jones with the Cowboys. Like, obviously that guy wants to win, but he has too much controlling power in that franchise, and it's kind of hurting him. So ultimately, the Walter Penner Group, it's too early to really judge them. I like the Bermuda grass. I like the new scoreboard. I like the new practice facility that they're going to be building in the next couple of years. But how important is it that they win? I believe to them that they want to, because they're saying all the right things. They're putting a good group together. And ultimately, like, Sean Payton, who do you think has more power over the direction of the team? The owner, the GM, or Sean Payton? Sean Payton, in my opinion, he's making the moves in the draft room. Like, sure, George Payton and him are, coming to an agreement, but I really feel like Sean Payton's kind of leading the direction of all of their draft picks. I'm sure there's a couple guys George Payton's like, what about this guy? And he's like, okay, we'll take a look. But for the most part, I think Sean Payton is the only person that we need to have faith in for this franchise to get back on the right path. And it's hardly fair to judge him off of last year, because that was not his team. He inherited that system, that quarterback and those players. He tried to make it work. And even this year, it's hard to say that, you could judge him too harshly, because now there's all the disaster from all the stuff he had to tear down last year. So I'm with you. Like, there's a direction that we're headed in right now, but people that are so quick to be like, Sean Payton's just like Bill Belichick, like, oh, their glory days are, behind them. They're older coaches. They're not innovative enough. It's like, if Sean Payton, that's not true. That's just a lazy way of grouping, older coaches that haven't had success in the last year, So I do think Sean Payton, that hire, I was about as happy about that as I was when Russell Wilson was traded to the Broncos. Because admittedly, it was one of the best moments of
all
my
aboard
life.
The hype train.
You were on the hype train too.
I was on that hype train hard.
No one knew. Like, who could have known? And it's the same thing. They say George Payton, gave him $240 million. The one thing I will say is, like, yeah, maybe he was under contract for a year. Maybe let him play, a game and just see what it looks like. But we all, including the media, nobody came out and said this is a horrific deal. But as soon as it didn't work out, everyone was like, fire George Payton. It's like, dude, we all fell for it, not just George Payton.
I don't know. It may or may not be considered a hot take. Again, I feel like Broncos country is really divided on George Payton overall. And honestly, I don't understand why. Because if we separate his actions as the GM between drafting and then player contracts, acquisitions, free agency moves, and all that jazz, just those two separate things, what he's brought to the table in terms of draft picks has been outstanding. And it is so difficult to find somebody who has a good eye for talent, who has a consistent track record of drafting good quality players. If we compare his draft record to John Elway's, I think it'd be very easy to tell early on, minus a couple picks from John Elway, namely like Von Miller, I would say that George Paton has had a longer continued success because for whatever reason, John Elway could never find a quarterback. I subscribe to the conspiracy theory that he just didn't want anybody to be better than he was. And so he was
Yeah.
purposefully just getting a quarterback that was just good enough, but not great. But that aside, George Paton's abilities to draft players has been fantastic. I don't have any issues or complaints with that. The only issue or potential problem I could see anybody having with him as a GM has been how he's dealt with the player contracts and then like free agency moves. Keeping in mind that when he was brought on, we were in a state of flux because of our ownership group, because we were constantly rotating head coaches. Because of that, we're having new coaching staff. So we're not even keeping the same offensive or defensive system year after year. Because we were in such a state of flux and everything was fluid, I do not blame him for locking people up like Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy. That was all great because at the time we were like, this is a solid receiving core. We need these guys because we don't have a quarterback. Our defense, depending on the year, was either really good or mild to bad. So yeah, we've got some shining spots there on the offense. We want to make sure we keep those guys. He got ahead of the curve by signing them to a contract that at the time it was like, oh, that's a lot of money. But now here we are years later and it's like, yep, that's kind of the going rate for receivers now. So having the eye to the future, even for things like that, was great. I think the only thing you can definitively say was a bad idea was George Paton extending Russell Wilson before he took a snap for the Broncos. However, I also believe that Russell Wilson having a no trade clause does not come to Denver if he is not guaranteed an extension. I do not believe that because we got to keep in mind that at that time he was coming off of an injury. So his last year in Seattle wasn't that great, but he still had that name, Russell Wilson. Ooh, the moon ball, his ability to scramble. He's a short quarterback, but he's making it happen. Like all the allure that everything. Yeah.
Fastest quarterback to 100 wins.
Yeah. Like everything that made him, he still held that in the public eye, which is why when the Broncos signed him, everybody was like, oh, this is going to be amazing. He doesn't come to Denver if he doesn't get that guarantee. Seattle didn't give him that guarantee. Otherwise, he probably would have stayed. So out of everybody that was available, who was going to give him that guarantee? Who was going to willingly extend him before he even took a snap? Other teams made the smart move and said, we're not doing that. We want to see you for ourselves before we even commit to that decision. I think that the Broncos were in a state of panic. They got Hackett to be the head coach because they were trying to lure Aaron Rodgers to be the quarterback. It wound up not happening. And because he committed to another year with Green Bay, they were like, okay, we got to get somebody. Who's the next splashy free agent quarterback we could possibly sign? Russell Wilson.
I do think that there was a plan B going on during the time because it was like Aaron Rodgers re-signed, and like I said, my family's all Packer fans. So it was like, I remember I was in TAPS, which is like when you're getting out of the military, you take TAPS. I was in TAPS and my phone buzzes and it's like Aaron Rodgers re-signs to the Green Bay Packers. And I'm like, fuck. And then 10 minutes later, I get a text message from my uncle and he goes, Denver Broncos ! And I'm like, haha, yeah, I know. I was wrong, about Aaron Rodgers. And then he goes, no, Russell Wilson. And I'm just, these things take a lot of negotiating, especially those blockbuster type trades. So I am with you. I do think Aaron Rodgers was plan A, but I think plan B was going on in the background, just in case.
I agree. I think that Hackett had some sort of insight. He had a direct line of communication with Aaron Rodgers. That's why he's on the Jets right now. They're boys. And so I think Aaron was probably keeping him pretty aware of what he was thinking, what he was feeling. Hence why he was saying, hey, guys, I don't think my guy's coming. We should look at somebody else. And so I do believe that Aaron Rodgers was the go-to. That was plan A. But I think they saw the writing on the wall and they were like, okay, we do need to have something in our back pocket just in case, unless something changes, it doesn't look like this is going to pan out. We have to have a second option. We have to have an option B. And so I think that's why we had that kind of play out the way that it did. But again, You have a first-time head coach. You have a team that hasn't won for a while. They don't really have a clear direction. What's one of the best things that you can do? Make a splashy move in free agency, specifically at the quarterback position. So if you're not going to get the guy that you want at the time, who was the next best guy who was available? And it was Russell Wilson. And that's why everybody at the time was like, this is fantastic for the Broncos. This is going to be great. This is good for Hackett to have because he's going to have somebody who is proven, who has won games, who can help kind of shepherd the team in a new direction. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. But at the time, that was viewed as a fantastic move. The only issue people had was that extension. But at the same time, I don't think that Russell comes to Denver if he doesn't have that guarantee.
Yeah, I haven't considered or even heard that kind of perspective. So I think that's really, really good to keep in mind, that there's things that go on behind the scenes that, could potentially explain some of the stuff that, happens that we don't really get info on. We don't get read in, if you will. So great perspective on that. I think that's really likely that makes too much sense. Why he left Seattle. The Broncos were willing to do it, and that was part of the deal all along. Especially because, that stuff takes a long time too. Negotiating with agents. I mean, Jordan Love's trying to get a new contract right now. He's still showing up at OTAs, but Trevor Lawrence has been, in contract negotiations for a year maybe now. This stuff takes time, and for it to happen that quick, it must have been a high priority for both parties. So great point there. Talking about the Chargers, you mentioned the Chargers with Harbaugh. And when you were talking about AFC West kind of divisional rivalries, you're like, the Raiders have, they've had our number. It's annoying. The Chiefs are a dynasty. That makes sense. But we've never really been worried about the Chargers. And it's true. Like, even when the Chargers are good, it's like, worst case scenario, we'll split the series. We may, sweep them any given year. And the Chargers, they call it charging, right? They have a way of charging a game away, like the game where Trevor Lawrence threw 3 picks in the first half in the wild card round, and then the Jags came back and won. I think it was 27-0, and they came back and won the game. Wow, what a good game that was! But the Chargers, I grew up in Jacksonville as well, so I'm always I've been to more games, Jacksonville games, than any team, just from living there. But going back to the Chargers, I think there was even a season where the Chargers were number 1 on offense, number 1 on defense, and missed the playoffs. Like, they take it to an art form of how, they find these creative ways to just charger the games away. And now with Harbaugh on this team, leading this team with Justin Herbert, I think it's really possible that the Chargers are at least maybe like they could be a 10-win team. I mean, when you look at Alex Smith and his time with the 49ers, like, he's openly talked about how Harbaugh saved his career. Like, he had like 3-win seasons. The stats were not good. Harbaugh got there, and all of a sudden Alex Smith, he just kind of like walked right into his potential. Like, the reason he was drafted number 1 overall, all of a sudden he got that out of him. Now Harbaugh, I mean, what's the quarterback's Herbert had all this success, and Harbaugh wasn't even there. Like, we know that Herbert is, some people would say, a top 5 quarterback. Some people would say top 10. I think most people would probably settle around like 7 or 8, somewhere around there. But now you bring in Harbaugh and a good draft that they had. I think that the Chargers in the charging, I think that's all in the past. And I think the Chargers are going to be a legitimate threat in the AFC. Of course, the Chiefs are going to be tough. But how concerned, just as a Broncos fan, are you about the Chargers? Because it's easy to say, well, they have Harbaugh. It's like, well, we have Sean Payton. We have to keep that in mind. Like, this is a pretty good Andy Reid, Sean Payton, and Jim Harbaugh. Like, find me a better divisional head coach, trio. I'm trying to think right now. I don't think there is one. I think that's probably.
I would say maybe the AFC North. Maybe the AFC North because
Jack
of
Taylor, Mike Tomlin.
Yeah.
And who won Coach of the Year, Stefanski.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a pretty good group too, and that division is going to be really fun to watch. But
correct.
Do you expect the Chargers to make the postseason year one? And how concerned are you about the Chargers moving forward as a Broncos fan?
So when they expanded from 16 to 17 games, and then they also opened up the playoffs to extra teams, now there's finally, for the first time ever, the possibility of an entire division going to the playoffs. That's crazy. Could that happen? Absolutely. That absolutely could happen. But barring a situation like that, I don't know how much a lock the Chargers are for a playoff berth this season. I think they'll definitely be in the wild card race. That's for sure. And then if things go their way, yeah, they could probably get in. But I think when you look at the AFC West right now, it's basically a guarantee the Chiefs are going to get in. The way that the Chargers are structured after they've made their cuts and everything, we're not going to have to deal with Keenan Allen. He's I think in Chicago. They lost Mike Williams
to the Jets.
Yeah, so I think that they're making
Austin
room
Eckler.
for they're making room for the new young talent they just brought on board, and maybe some future moves that haven't panned out just yet. But there's a clear direction, and again, looking across the Chargers' history, just from when I was growing up in the 90s to today, they've only really been dangerous. I mean, back in the day, guys like Junior Seau, LT. I mean, those were the guys that made them the dangerous team. They haven't been dangerous like that since.
Sean Phillips with the lights out.
Right.
I forgot about that.
They haven't been that much of a threat to the AFC West or to the AFC in general, in my opinion, since that time. Even with all the years they had with Phillip Rivers, what'd you have to show for it? A couple playoff seasons, but they didn't even went to the AFC conference championship game, did they?
Yeah, I think they went in 2008, if I'm not mistaken, with Norv Turner. I think they lost to the Patriots.
I was deployed that year, so that would make sense why I don't remember that one. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, for all, because he played 12, 14 years for them. He was there for a while. And
Phillip Rivers was there at least a decade.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of.
How long was Drew Brees with the Saints? That's about the same timeline.
Yeah, I think 12, it's a good 10, 12 years or so. So, I mean, you've got that many years, that many games, that many seasons, and your best outing was an AFC championship berth, which is great. And don't get me wrong, that's fantastic, but you never even had a chance to go to the Super Bowl.
16.
You never had a chance. There you go. So 16 seasons.
That's a lot.
And so for whatever reason, they would just start games crazy, and they would just get out in front of everybody. And then for whatever reason, it's almost like they're like, all right, we got enough points. We're going to stop playing now. But it was like that every season, regardless of who the head coach was. And so that kind of tradition has just continued for whatever reason. And I think that, I'm of the same opinion. As soon as Harbaugh was announced as the new head coach, that stopped being a thing for the Chargers. Them charging away the game or the season, I think that's done. I don't think with a head coach like that, you're going to have the ability to slack off and not put in the effort. You're not going to give the other team an opportunity. And then having somebody who is a little bit more old school in their approach, and how they try to win games, that's going to put the Chargers in a very good position to win games. And so I think really if you were to break down the AFC West right now and rank them 1 to 4, clearly the Chiefs are 1. That's easy. it's almost muddied waters at that point for 2, 3, and 4 because they're so close. But it's also like, well, what version of the team are you going to get? Because the Raiders, we could easily put them in the last slot. They haven't been that good, but neither have we. So we could take the cellar dweller position. Maybe, we beat the Chargers, but just because we beat the Chargers, does that mean we're a better team? So who
Yeah.
definitively is 2, 3, and 4? It's kind of unclear right now. And so I think in Harbaugh's first year, Sean Payton's first year with his guy in Bo Nix, and then also the Raiders maybe finally have a head coach because they went on a crazy run. I still think they should have kept Rich Bisaccia when he took over after Gruden got the boot. For whatever reason, they didn't want to keep him. So
he was the special teams coach, right?
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, he went to Green Bay. So I mean, I thought that was the guy. He would have been a fantastic head coach. But now here we are. We've got Coach Pierce. He has the Raider mentality.
Yeah.
I mean, he is kind of like a dark horse candidate, I would say, if he turns the Raiders around this season for Coach of the Year.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially when you have the competition of the Broncos, of the not the Raiders, of the Chiefs and of the Chargers now. Like, you've got 6 games on your schedule right now. If you win half of them, that's a good first season as the head coach. So it's hard to say definitively like who is 2, 3, and 4 in the division, because it's like rock, paper, scissors. No one is a clear-cut winner and beats everybody. Like, I can beat this team, but then that team beats me, but then they beat that team, and it just continues on. So
I think I agree with that. Like, it is a little muddy, 2, 3, and 4. I think 2's got to go to the Chargers, though. I think the reason is because, okay, you take the head coach. Yeah, he hasn't been in the NFL in a while, but he's a proven winner. Like, he goes to places and he turns their franchise around. He's the first coach to leave after winning a national championship. Like, he has these, the only reason he left is because he wants the Super Bowl so he can sit at the big boy table with his brother and his dad. And he wants this. It's really important to him. So, okay, we have Sean Payton, but Justin Herbert. Okay, so if you're just talking like look at, all the teams that make the playoffs, the one thing they had in common, a really good quarterback and a good head coach. Mostly. There's like 1 or 2 exceptions maybe. But it's an offensive league, and that's the way the NFL is right now. I mean, I think the entire AFC, the teams that were in the postseason, were all offensive coaches. And that's what's kind of different, because you're right. Harbaugh does have that old school mentality, but a lot of those old school coaches that are defensive have kind of lost a lot of, like, even Mike Tomlin, as great as he is, look at how the Steelers have looked on offense, not even just post Ben Roethlisberger, but even, in his last 5 years. Like, when's the last time, you saw the Steelers score 40 points? But Harbaugh is a quarterback whisperer, and he's old school. And I think that combo is really dangerous because it's all about the fundamentals, being tough and physical, nasty, and then also somehow he has this ability to score a ton of points by just running the football, opening up the passing game. Like, I think if you just look at the quarterback head coach duo, I think the Chargers, it's their spot at 2 right now, probably as that trade happened. I know they lost Austin Eckler, but longtime Hall of Fame great Broncos Hall of Famer Jerry Rice, his son is with the Chargers now. I think he got picked in the 7th round, Brendan Rice. Yeah. So I don't know how good he's going to be right away, but the Chargers had a pretty decent draft. But I don't want to talk about the Chargers anymore. It's, they'll hopefully, it won't work out. It'll be a dumpster fire. They'll be like, wow, we're still charging. Like, I hope that's the case. Now, Antonio Pierce, I said during the offseason, I was like, the right thing would probably be to sign Antonio Pierce for the next 2 years. And I was like, and that's why I don't think the Raiders will do it, because it makes sense and it's the right thing to do. And the Raiders don't do those things. And then they did it. And I was like, okay, you're right. Like, between the Broncos and Raiders, that's where I see kind of like, okay, this could go either way. And I think at quarterback, it's reasonable to say maybe, Bo Nix will be the better quarterback out of Gardner Minshew with Antonio Pierce, because that's still a defensive head coach versus Sean Payton, offensive coach. So ideally, the Broncos and Chargers will battle for two. And the Raiders, like you said, they could surprise us and be, head coach of the year candidate for Antonio Pierce. And Bill's a huge Giants fan. He's actually in here. He said, I agree with Travis on processing the field ability is paramount. The main thing holding my Daniel Jones back. And yeah. And now I told him, I was like, I think Drew Lock is going to surprise a lot of people in New York this year.
I had so much hope and expectation for him, but unfortunately he was given such a raw deal with his offensive playbook changing yearly, his OC changing almost yearly. I still wish we would have had at least a second year with him and Rich before he wound up leaving. But the one thing I do miss about the Fangio days was that defense. That was some really, really good football to watch defensively. And so it sucked. It kind of hurt my heart a little bit last year seeing our team struggle with defense for the majority of the season. So I'm hopeful that, with another year of Sean Payton implementing his system and, this year's draft, supposedly, I just read, I think either yesterday or today, that Lucas Kroll is looking pretty good, which would be fantastic.
Yes.
That would be fantastic because I had high hopes for Dulcich. He looks great, but he can't stay on the field. So if he can stay healthy, I'm all about it. Let's keep him. But I mean, what is it? Oh yeah. I mean, what is it with Broncos and not being able to find a tight end since Shannon Sharp? How many have we been through that just either they don't work out because they're too one-dimensional, or they're not one-dimensional and they're always hurt. Like if we could just get one tight end, I would be
Julius Thomas
fantastic.
Was pretty good, but then it's hard to keep a roster together after you win a Super Bowl because everybody's value goes
all the way up.
And it's like, okay, we can't keep this team together. And then it turned out some of those decisions were right. Letting Julius Thomas go turned out to be the right decision. That guy disappeared from the league in like 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And that is still just mind blowing to me. Shaq Barrett, we let him go.
The one that got away.
And now he's with, where did he go? He just got traded.
He left Tampa.
And I think he went to, I can't remember right now, but I was talking about him earlier in the week, and I was saying this guy, he is the one that got away. What do you think about these these?
Oh, the hot topic of the year for us Broncos fans, huh? I'm a little biased. Again, well, good to know. I hope he does well with another system that he can hopefully implement in more than just 1 year. Yeah, I don't think he's as bad as everybody else says. But yeah, back to the jerseys. I'm a little biased. Again, I grew up watching mid-90s Broncos, so I never saw a single game in the Orange Crush, days. I never saw those jerseys. I never saw that uniform. I grew up with that orange stripe on the side. That's when I think of the Broncos. For a long time, I always thought of that uniform and specifically Mike Shanahan's face. Like that was the Broncos for me. And so I think it was time for a refresh. Absolutely. I also don't think that the jerseys or the uniforms are as bad as people are painting them out to be. I overall like it. There's just a couple of things that I would have changed specifically. I love the matte helmets. Those are beautiful. If it's not a matte helmet, let it be the stripe, but the matte helmet, regardless of color, looks gorgeous. I wasn't a fan of the absurd amount of triangles that they just poured onto these jerseys, whether it's the cutouts and the numbers or the triangles on the helmets. I think we could have done without all the triangles on the helmets, because when I saw that, I was like, this just looks like the Michigan Wolverine like sticker thing, except it's uniform and it's the same on everybody's helmet. Like, what the hell? Like, why? I don't want that. But I think that overall it is a good design. I just wish that they would have changed the mountain on the sleeve. That's the only other complaint that I have, because I, as a Broncos fan, as soon as it came out, I was watching the commercials. I'm like poring over all the details, and my coworkers are walking by and they're like, "Why are you guys supporting the Chargers on your sleeves?" And I'm like,
"Oh, I know.
It's not the Chargers. Like, get over it. It's not the lightning bolt. Like, it's okay." But of course, I'm a Broncos fan. They got to razz me, but I wish they would have done that a little bit differently. I wish they would have given it like a Twin Peaks kind of triangle cutout or something, just so that it's not so Charger-esque. I understand what they were going for, but I think that could have been done better, because I do like the mountain on the sleeve. I'm a fan. I just don't think that this was it.
I do too. I like the mountains, and you know which one's really growing on me is the second one, the blue on blue with the white helmets.
Yeah,
That one, I'm starting to really like that one the more I see it. And this happens all the time. I mean, there's been times I've been at a store and I spend $300 on a rug at Home Depot, and I put it in my living room, and I'm like, something's wrong. I don't know
right.
what. And then 2 days later, I'm like, oh, it looks good. It looks good. I don't know. So a little bit is just probably getting used to it. And Bill said, "Yep, with you on the blue and white helmet. That one looks awesome." But looking at some of these other ones, the one on the far right, oh my God, I'm gonna say it.
I'm
It's embarrassing.
I'm not a fan of the combination. I think that the matte blue helmet there was the wrong choice. I think that they should have gone with the orange crush helmet. They should have gone with the stripe. I think that would pop better. I also don't like the white socks with the orange pants.
No, it looks
I
so dorky.
I don't like that, but like when you look right next to it, just like the color inverse, orange top, orange socks with the white pants, that's beautiful. I love
Yeah,
that.
that,
You know,
and it's funny because when you look at the one on the far right, it makes you appreciate the two next to him.
100%.
That one on
It's
the far right looks like and I'm not the first person to say this, but when you get Madden and you go with a fake team and they initiate a uniform for a fake team, like that's what
right.
this looks like. Like we haven't earned better uniforms yet.
I mean, it sucks because like if I cover up that helmet, it almost looks like a Browns jersey. It
Yeah,
almost looks like a Browns getup, and
it
it's like,
does.
like I, I don't know. I have mixed feelings on it all. Overall, I'm okay with it. Certain things I really like, certain things I don't. But yeah, that one on the far right is not pretty to look at all. And
Yeah,
I
hopefully
don't
they
I
get
don't know what it'll take to get that outlawed, but the soonest that can happen, I am signing that petition.
Yeah, if they're gonna wear that one, just go all white.
Yes.
White pants.
I would say give me the a white version of the color rush. I'm all about it, because I'm actually a fan of the color rush. I love the all orange. I think it's gorgeous.
Oh
So
yeah, that I'm gonna miss that. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
I remember when they like they what was it? It was the all blues. Their home uniform was the navy blue or the navy blues,
Mhm.
and that was awesome. And then when I think it was the Manning era, his first year, they went to the orange jerseys, and that was our home uniform. This
Mhm.
one right here.
Yep.
And those were awesome. I remember being like, "Oh, this is awesome." And then just last year, whenever Denver would wear their alternative, what used to be their home jerseys, I was like, "Oh man, it's a good time to bring those back." Like it's been a while, you
Yeah.
know. So I started enjoying those. But yeah, I'm gonna miss this jersey,
Yeah.
uh, a lot. And I didn't realize it, until they were like, "Here's your new one." Because for a while, some of us were thinking that it was going to be a throwback. And I think it's a fair point that, new ownership. They're trying to establish kind of like, hey, not here's something from the past, but here's something new. But I think as long as we go with these, middle two for most games, and who knows, like the players, they're all into, style and swag. Like I'm sure
Yeah.
they're going to be like, Sean, can we wear the white pants with this if we're going to do it? And he'll, even the blue pants
Yeah.
with the one on the far right. The orange ones just look weird. Um, but yeah, I just wanted to get your feedback because, like you said, it's a hot topic in Broncos land this year, and people are. I understand like being upset about it, but at the end of the day, like we can't do anything about it. So it's like, what are you gonna do? Just complain all the time about it? I mean, these are our uniforms now, and we can't change them for years.
Yeah, I mean, I don't keep up on all like the NFL like rules when it comes to like the jersey changes and what like because there's like you can only wear specific helmets with specific uniform combinations. Like I don't keep up on all that. That's way too in depth for me. But I think that the fans are going to make their feelings known. I think the players are going to make their feelings known, and we're probably going to get some decent combinations. It may not happen this year or next year, but within the next, I'd say 5 years, we'll have ironed out most of it. We probably won't even have that one on the far right, I would imagine.
Well, before we wrap it up, this has been a blast. By the way, I think this one might be my favorite. The one thing I did want to ask: the new schedule came out. Russell Wilson returning to Denver week 2. Us going to Seattle, which still feels like a rivalry to me, even though Russ is gone, just because of the way that Seattle hopped in our press conferences after losing. Let's ride, all that. So there's a part of me, and then Super Bowl 48. I'm going to be honest, like I lived in Washington State for 5 years, and
I don't remember that Super Bowl at all. I thought it got canceled. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, me neither. I definitely don't remember the score and where I was and the people I was around.
What I was drinking, what I was eating, the time of day.
Oh, that was rough. That was a rough one. It's funny, like they got there because their offense, and then Super Bowl 50, their offense was bad, and they got there because their defense. They never put it together. If they could have put that together, they could have won 4 in a row.
What a ride that would have been.
That would have been a ride. Talk about a ride. Okay, but did you see the schedule get released?
I saw it got released, but I haven't looked at it too in depth. So
okay,
new territory for me.
Yeah, so this is week 1. They're playing the Seahawks. Week 2, they play the Steelers. That's going to be their home opener. Actually, I'm going to just do this for you. All right, so this is preseason. The NFL or the Broncos just told us that this preseason game with the Packers are actually going to have joint practice.
Yeah.
And then week 1, September 8th, Broncos Seahawks. Then our home opener against the Steelers, Russell Wilson. That should be a lot of fun. These are 2 tough games. I know like they're not impossible tough. It's not the Panthers, but these are going to be 2 teams that I think whoever wins this game, it's going to be within 3, regardless of who it is. And then Tampa, I mean, I'm Baker Mayfield showed a lot of promise.
He did. I'm really happy for him. I think that's a really good fit, and trying to separate the ego that he has had for a while. I think it was very humbling for him to have bounced around, and so I'm hopeful that he'll take this opportunity and do very well with it.
Yeah, I agree. You could see just how much he matured, and working underneath Sean McVay was great. And now he's actually got the quarterback's coach when he was with the Rams is now the offensive coordinator in Tampa. So a lot of people are crowning Atlanta with Kirk Cousins. I'm like, Baker, that team earned the right to be the favorite until Atlanta shows something on the field.
That division is so bad, but I do think that it does come down to Atlanta and Bucks. I think they're going to be the 2 contenders for 1 and 2. I haven't looked at their schedules, obviously, but yeah, I could see it going either way. Specifically, just because we don't know how well Kirk Cousins is going to do coming back from his injury. But then on top of that, if the Bucks can pick it up from where they left off last year, watch out. That
Yeah.
that division could be theirs very easily.
And then you see, so 2 of the first 3 games are on the road. This one is a big one because it's on, it's in Tampa Bay. So you're going from Mountain Time to the East Coast, playing this game at it'll be 1 p.m. Then they are going to potentially stay in the. Sean talked about this in his press conference yesterday. They're trying to work out where they would go. He wants to stay on the East Coast. But then that brings in a whole nother set of issues with like people and their families and leaving them for 2 weeks and, players and, just having their mind right. And then finally we have this home game against the Raiders, which feels like, I would say, our first easy game, but we haven't beaten them in 4 years. So not necessarily an easy game. And then here we go with the Chargers, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be, Harbaugh, and that's going to be a good team. Then an emotional game probably for Sean Payton on Thursday Night Football, going to New Orleans. So overall, right now, I'd say the schedule's not impossible. It's not Bengals, Ravens, Texans, but it's each game presents a significant challenge. And then you get the Panthers here. Hopefully, that's an easy win. I think we lost to the Panthers last year, or the year before last year. The Ravens, that's going to be tough. Ravens, Chiefs, Falcons. That's not a great combo. The Ravens game's on the road, Chiefs on the road, and then a home game against the Falcons, then on the road to play the Raiders again, home against a Browns team that should be better, Colts team that should be good, Chargers again, Bengals, and Chiefs. As much as I'm like believing in, the process and where we're at, a lot of these teams are a little bit further along in their process than we are. Like, we don't know about the Steelers. I'm not a big Geno Smith guy. So I think, if we could start 2-0, I think that would go a very long way for us this year.
I agree.
Especially if you can be 2-0 going into this Bucks game, right? Because then you're feeling good. You could, maybe upset them in their own house. And then, the Jets, that's going to be a really tough game if Rodgers can stay healthy.
I want revenge so bad for Hackett Bowl 2.0. That really, really rubbed me raw last year. So I think going into their house and making a statement win, even if we won by a single point, don't care. I want that win.
That's important. Is that the most important game for you this year?
Ooh, I think, you know what? That one's probably tied with the Steelers, just because I believe the Steelers to be a beatable team. Their roster is awesome. It's excellent. I mean, Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth, TJ Watt. Credit to where credit is due. Mike Tomlin is a hell of a coach, and he's done a fantastic job of creating a really good roster. The thing they've been missing is a quarterback. So the question is,
like the Broncos,
right? So the question is, does Tomlin create a relationship with Russell Wilson that I would say is more hardline than what he had with Sean Payton? Does he bend the knee and adopt the Steeler way? Does he try and reinvent the wheel and reinvigorate his career, the Hall of Fame aspirations that have been surrounding his name? Like, does that come back, or does he get beat out by Justin Fields? And I think with that kind of pressure, it's going to take a lot for him to keep that starting gig. I think he will be the starter week 2. I'm sorry, that was a preseason game. Week 2, I think he still will be the starter. But I would not be surprised if things are going the same way that they did here in Denver, where he's just not quite getting it done. They're paying him the vet minimum because we're footing the rest of his salary. So why not roll the dice and see what happens with Justin Fields, the kid who's got more time in the NFL as it stands right now. He's younger. He's probably faster. I don't know if he's got a bigger arm, but I mean, they both have a very similar skill set. So I think in terms of coaching, who's going to adopt the system the quickest?
Yeah,
And
and Russell
that's
Wilson and Justin Fields are very similar.
yeah.
Very
So
similar.
I think that between the Steelers and the Jets, those are like the two games. I mean, apart from rivalry games, of course,
Right, right.
those are the two that I would keep my eye on the most.
I'm excited for the Saints game. I think the Saints aren't going to be good this year, so I think we get a win here, and that'll be good for Sean, especially if if we can handle our AFC West opponents right here, Raiders, Chargers, Saints, Panthers. I think this could be our I think it might be the only part of the schedule where we
I was
go
just
on a
saying
4-win streak.
that's like our easy stretch right in the beginning. If we could pull it out and start 2-0, split either the Chargers or the Raiders, just take one of them, we should hopefully get a win against the Saints. And then the Panthers after that. I mean, talking
Yeah,
about a good 4-5 win, record at that point.
and you need that going
That
into
would
this.
go a long way. Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I mean, it we'll take it one game at a time. It's going to be a really tough environment in Seattle. I thought that game should be in Denver since I was at the Seahawks Broncos game 2 years ago when they attempted
nice.
that long field goal because I was stationed in Whidbey Island, which
Okay,
is like North Washington State, and I was like, "There's no way I'm missing that game."
yeah.
Uh, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about?
Um, I guess really at this point, the only thing that I feel that should be mentioned is props, kudos, much love and respect to my guy Justin Simmons. He will be sorely missed. I love that guy. He was a class act, consistently in the running for the Denver nomination for Man of the Year award.
Yeah.
I think they only really gave it to a couple other players just because of like, well, we can't give it to Justin every year. But like he was a phenomenal guy, great player. And if I had my wish, we bring him back, we pay him whatever he wants. We find a way to make the money move, but I would bring him back in a heartbeat. I know he's not as fast as he used to be, but I don't think he's lost that much of his step. I don't
No
think
way.
that his mind stopped being able to dissect the offense. I mean, this is the guy who's single-handedly responsible for the wins that we've had over the Chiefs in the last 5 years. Like this is the guy that above all I wish we could have kept.
Yeah.
I felt the same way, maybe not as strongly when it came to when we made the trade for Russell Wilson and we had to say goodbye to Shelby Harris. Loved Shelby. I thought
Yeah.
he was a fantastic guy, solid player.
A lot of
It
back
sucks.
downs, gets his
Yeah,
hands up.
I like just and having a guy like that in your locker room who obviously is performing on the field, but having that like veteran presence of I've been here for a while and like I know what I'm doing, and having that confidence, being able to coach up the younger guys in those same positions, like that goes such a long way. So he will definitely be missed, and so it sucks and it saddens me to know he's not going to be a Bronco this year. But I would bring him back in a heartbeat.
I feel the same way, and I was telling my buddy Brick on the Only Football podcast when I think it was the day he was released. I was like, "Man, dude, like that one hurt." Last time I felt that was Von Miller. That was the last
Yeah,
player that we lost that I felt that strongly about. And I've been to 3 Bronco games since Justin Simmons was a Bronco. In the first one, I went to a game against the Chiefs on Sunday night. That was the one where Patrick Mahomes dislocated his kneecap doing a QB sneak.
oh yeah.
And that was fun. That was fun because I was PCSing from Jacksonville to Washington State, so I caught a game, on my way over.
Nice.
And I waited outside after that game, and Justin Simmons went around and he spent about an hour signing autographs. and they had just lost like 40 something to like 10. It was a blowout. And then I was like, wow, this guy is different, because everyone else just kind of walked past everybody. This guy went person to person to person. No matter if they had 10 things to sign, he was just calmly like, you guys don't have to rush. I'm going to sign all your stuff, all of it.
Yeah.
So then the next time I went to a game, he did it again. And I was like, oh, wow. And that first time I told him, I was like, I still remember when you blocked that field goal against the Saints. And he was just kind of like smiled. He didn't look up and make eye contact, because then people will try to talk to him, and he's got a lot of autographs to sign. You know what I mean? So he's just like kind of going through, nodding and agreeing to stuff. And the third time, it was the same exact thing. And I literally asked people that had the season tickets, and I'm like, this guy does this every single game? And they're like, Justin Simmons spends about an hour to an hour and a half after every home game signing every single fan memorabilia that they won. And I've never seen that in any sports team, like a player that is that committed to the fans. And then you incorporate just how much he meant to the city, what he did for, the Boys and Girls Club, the hospital. I mean, he did so much, and he doesn't have the Russell Wilson type publicity where, he posts, when he does something good, it gets posted everywhere. But Justin Simmons was doing, all that and then some, that people like Russ was. And he really does deserve to win Walter Payton Man of the Year. And what bothered me the most about Justin Simmons not coming back was, well, A, that he's not coming back, and then B, that they gave his jersey number away immediately to a rookie that we just drafted.
And that did hurt me, but I saw it ironically on Reddit. He said, it sucks that I have to say this, but like, give this guy some love. Like, he's going to wear my old number, and he's going to try and do you proud. He's going to try and do me proud, but above all, he's going to do himself proud. Like, don't hate on him because he got my number, and it's just like, dude, look at this class act. Like, he's not even a member of the team. And
still going to Nuggets.
Yeah. Like, to spend that amount of time with the organization, and to have that kind of mentality, and to be as revered as you are in a relatively short amount of time. It's not like he's John Elway and been here for 10 plus years, like he's been here for a little bit, but like, he's gained so much favor, and is in such good standing with everybody. And his final act, kind of as a former Bronco, is championing the guy who took his number. He could have just as easily been like, yeah, that Broncos, that's trash. I mean, look at what happened with Judy when he went to Cleveland, instantly starts opening his mouth, starts saying stuff. And if I'm Jerry Jeudy, yeah, I probably feel a certain type of way, but you didn't produce on the field the way that Justin did.
Yeah.
And you didn't have the same standing that Justin did. So if anybody should open up their mouth and say something, I would not have held it against him. And he didn't. Instead, he took the high road and just continues to show what kind of guy he is. And for me, like, I grew up in Arizona for a few years. So I was able to see the Cardinals scrimmages up in Flagstaff where I was living, because they would play at elevation before they go back down to Phoenix. And Larry Fitzgerald was the same guy, staying behind, signing everybody's autographs. He was always garnering the most attention. He spent the most time, quiet, professional. Like, a lot of Larry I see in Justin Simmons. And I think that's part of the reason why I really, really loved that he was a member of our team. And so I would bring him back in a heartbeat. But if he doesn't come back, which I don't expect him to, I want him to go win a ring, because he deserves it.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying he could go to Tennessee. I don't want to see that for him.
I don't like that for him at all.
Yeah, I would like to see him maybe pair up with Kyle Hamilton, in Baltimore.
I was going to say, I don't want him to go to a team that's floundering just because there's a need. He could fit. I want him to go to a team where it's like, maybe if he's riding the bench for half the year and he's not a starter, doesn't matter. I just want him to get a ring. So,
and what hurts the most is what hurts is the fact that every single press conference, like, he was a total professional, and he would promise, like, hey, we're going to get it right. We're going to turn this around. And then by the end of the season, you could see he was like deflated, and he was like, I'm not going to tell you guys, like, it's going to be better, because I've said that before. like he always was like, the buck stops with me and I'm going to turn this team around. Yeah. And for him to never make the playoffs in his whole entire career, it kind of hurts that he's going to go experience that with someone else, especially if we make the playoffs in the next couple of years without him. Like, it doesn't feel right. It's like Justin Simmons, if anyone deserves to enjoy the fruit of the labor, it's Justin Simmons.
Yeah.
So it's a bummer that guys like that sometimes, go their whole tenure, and never make the playoffs. Like, the guy deserves to win. And I really wanted it to be Denver that gives him that. And the fact is he's still a major asset that you want on the team. Like, we have the cap space. I don't know if this is just a part of like, we tore down the old regime and we need to kind of move past guys like Justin Simmons that are, we're here since 2016. I don't know if it's like one of those, but that doesn't make any sense to me because he deserves to be a Bronco and he's playing good ball still. I think he's got the most interceptions as a safety since coming into the league. Like, this is a Pro Bowler. When he doesn't make the Pro Bowl, he's snubbed most of the time.
Oh, absolutely.
He doesn't deal with a ton of injuries.
It's terrible.
Not on a great team. So, it doesn't get the credit he deserves. But Justin Simmons is, if I had in my lifetime, the players that I grew up watching, not even talking about John Elway, Terrell Davis, Shannon Sharp. Those are, of course, greats, but people that I personally, experience, Justin Simmons is in my top 10 Broncos all time for my lifetime. So I'm glad you brought that up because he definitely deserves to be talked about. And nobody else has brought him up. But thank you for coming on. I would love to, like, during the season, maybe like before, one of these games or the season opener, we could have you back on to, maybe chat about, what's going on, what we've discovered, who's starting at quarterback and stuff like that.
Absolutely. That sounds awesome.
Well, Bill, thanks for being here in the comments. And Bill did say about the Saints game, is Radler starting for the Saints by the time you meet them? Derek Carr is also playing the Raiders. That's in a revenge game that's happening this year as well.
Yeah.
And then Bill said Larry and Eli were the Walter Payton Man of the Year the same year. And, of course, Bill's a Giants fan, so he knows that. And then he said, great show, guys. Good job, Travis. Honestly, I can't say this enough. You absolutely crushed this.
Oh, thank you.
It was an absolute pleasure to do this, with you, somebody that's knowledgeable, somebody that's passionate. This is exactly what I had in mind when I wanted to start this. So thanks for, being here, and hopefully we'll see you back on.
Oh, absolutely. I will definitely come back if you want me.
Definitely. All right. Well, God bless Bo Nix, and thank you for watching episode 5 of Interviewing Broncos Country.
Thanks.